Alex thought he heard rats whispering, but when they spoke his language, he knew the hostel was no longer safe. Welcome to Royal Beat Tales. If you are just seeing us for the first time, please subscribe, like, and comment for more unique stories. Warrior Delta School was a peaceful boarding school for boys. It sat in a quiet area with green fields and tall trees. Students followed the rules and did all their daily routines on time. Everything seemed normal and happy during the day. But one hostel was different. Saint Kizito Hostel was the largest dormitory, and it carried a secret darkness. Every boy who lived there felt something strange in the air at night. They whispered that unseen eyes were watching them from the shadows. Alex was a 16-year-old new student who joined the school and was placed in SS1, a senior class. He was assigned to live in Saint Kizito Hostel. At first, Alex was excited to make friends and start this new chapter. But soon he noticed the chilling atmosphere around him in the hostel. He did not know that he was stepping into a living nightmare. On his first day, Alex heard warnings from some older boys. They told him to be careful at night. Students walking back from evening study prep class often saw scary shadows on the dorm walls. These shadows looked like people, but when anyone turned around, no one was there. Many boys were so frightened that they ran back to their classrooms instead of going to the hostel alone in the dark. Each night, Alex hurried to the hostel with his heart pounding, praying not to see any ghostly shadows following him. A few weeks later, Alex experienced something truly bizarre. One night, long after lights out, he woke up to a scratching sound. He quietly looked around in the dark dorm room. On top of a locker, he spotted two small rats. He thought they were just searching for food, but then he noticed they were standing on their hind legs, facing each other. Alex listened, and his blood ran cold. The rats were whispering to each other in clear words like humans. He even heard one rat say a short phrase in a tiny, raspy voice. Alex could not believe his ears. The rats were talking, and it sounded like they were plotting something evil. Alex screamed at the top of his lungs. In a blink, the rats jumped off the locker and scurried away into the darkness. All the other boys woke up in shock. Some of them screamed too, even though they did not know why Alex was yelling. The senior prefect turned on the lights and everyone looked around in confusion. Alex was trembling and pointing at the locker, trying to explain, but the rats were already gone. That night, nobody slept well. Alex stayed awake, eyes wide open, afraid the rats might come back. When morning came, Alex felt a stinging pain under his foot. He checked and found a small bite mark. A rat had bitten him during the night. It proved that what happened was real and not just a nightmare. Alex shivered at the thought that the talking rats had not only spoken, but also attacked him in his sleep. Not long after, another frightening thing started. Late at night, the boys in Saint Kizito began hearing voices behind their hostel. When the lights were out and all was quiet, Alex and his roommates would sit up and listen. They heard whispering and sometimes a creepy laugh coming from the bushes behind the building. A couple of brave boys took a peek outside, but it was too dark to see anyone. Yet the voices were clear as day, as if unseen people were having a secret meeting out there. The boys in the hostel were terrified. Who was out there in the dark, talking in whispers when everyone should be asleep? Finally, Alex and a few other students decided to tell the school rector about all these strange events. The rector was a priest and the head of the school. They went to his office and nervously explained about the shadows, the voices, and even the night Alex saw talking rats. The rector listened quietly and then gave a reassuring smile. He simply said, "There are no witches in this school. Only children who steal can be called witches." He told them that these were just scary stories or bad dreams. He advised them to pray and stop worrying. The boys left his office feeling upset and alone. The one person who could help did not believe them at all. Even after this report, the strange events in Saint Kizito Hostel continued and grew worse. One evening, a loud thump startled everyone in the hostel. Boys ran into the hall to see what happened. They found a younger student repeatedly banging his forehead against the concrete wall. His eyes were open but blank, and he didn't seem to know what he was doing. A senior boy grabbed him and pulled him away from the wall, but the boy had already hurt himself badly. He collapsed to the floor with blood trickling down his face. When he came to his senses a few minutes later, he was confused. He could not remember doing any of it. Everyone was shaken. Students whispered that an evil spirit must have taken over his body. It was clear to Alex and the others that a dark force was roaming the hostel, making people do terrible things. By this time, almost every student believed that two boys in Saint Kizito Hostel were behind all the evil. Their names were Jack and Fred. Jack was a quiet boy with a sly, creepy smile. Fred was taller and serious, with a strange wound on his knee that never healed. The wound looked ugly and never closed up. Fred never covered it. It was so gross that when Fred walked into the dining hall, many students lost their appetite and could not finish their food. Students feared Jack and Fred deeply. Some even claimed they saw Jack turn into a bird at night. One boy said he saw an owl perched on the hostel window and believed that owl was actually Jack in disguise. Everyone suspected Jack and Fred were using witchcraft and dark powers, but no one could prove it. Still, the boys knew something was very wrong with Jack and Fred, and they tried to avoid them as much as possible. Jack often tried to act kind by sharing snacks with other students. He gave out things like biscuits, sweets, gari, a local food, or ground nuts. But those who accepted food from Jack started to experience terrifying nights. They would have the same strange nightmare. In the dream, they found themselves walking in a dark, faraway place with other students around them. Jack was there too, leading the group. Fred was at the front with his glowing knee acting like a flashlight to light the way. The dream felt so real that a few boys woke up with mud on their feet, as if they had truly been out walking in the night. These boys realized it was not just a dream at all. Jack had secretly drawn them into a witchcraft gathering. He had initiated them into something evil without them knowing. Alex listened to these frightening stories and understood that Jack and Fred were slowly pulling many students into darkness. One night, Alex himself faced the unseen evil again. He woke up very late and needed to use the toilet. He did not want to walk all the way to the distant restroom in the dark, so he quietly slipped out the back door of the hostel to pee outside. The night was silent and pitch black. Alex's heart thumped as he stood behind the dorm, trying to be quick. All of a sudden, whack! Something struck Alex hard across his back, as if an invisible person had hit him with a stick. Alex yelped in pain and fear. He spun around, but he could see no one there. Terrified, Alex screamed into the night and ran towards the front of the hostel as fast as he could. Alex's scream woke up many boys in the hostel. A few of them saw Alex running and crying out, so they chased after him, thinking there was some danger. Alex ran straight toward the open football field, still in panic from the invisible attack. When he and the other boys reached the field, they stumbled upon a shocking scene. Under the pale moonlight, about 6 students were crouching on the grass at the far end of the field. They were digging their hands into the soil. Alex and his friends watched in horror as those students pulled out long, slimy worms from the dirt and stuffed them into their mouths. The boys watching could not believe their eyes. Those 6 students were from different classes, and Alex recognized them as usually quiet and shy kids. Now they were eating live worms like it was normal. One of Alex's friends accidentally stepped on a twig, making a sharp, cracking sound. At once, the worm-eating students snapped their heads towards Alex and the others. Their eyes were wild and seemed to glow faintly. One of them hissed like an angry snake. Then, right before Alex and his friends, something even more terrifying happened. The 6 students on the field began to change shape. Their arms stretched out and turned into wings with feathers. Their faces and bodies shrank and transformed into birds. In a flurry of dark feathers, they all turned into large night birds, like owls and crows, and flew up into the sky. Within moments, the sky was quiet and the birds were gone. Alex and the boys with him were left trembling on the field. They had just seen some of their classmates turn into creatures of the night. Now there was no doubt at all. True evil had taken over many of the students in the school. The following morning, the school was buzzing with fear and gossip. At the assembly, many students looked around in confusion and dread. The group of 6 students that Alex had seen on the field were nowhere to be found. Mr. John Bull, the housemaster, was furious and also afraid. He stood in front of all the students and shouted, "Who are the witches in this school?" His loud voice rang out across the silent assembly ground. No one answered his question. All the boys were too scared to speak. None of the students realized that Mr. John Bull himself had been attacked by the invisible force during the night. He had been checking the dorms and got whipped by something he couldn't see, just like Alex was. So he was determined to find the culprits. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone expected the school authorities to finally do something about the evil presence. Instead of organizing a search for witches, the rector was angry at Mr. John Bull for scaring the students with talk of witchcraft. Right after assembly, the rector called Mr. John Bull to his office and scolded him. The rector thought Mr. John Bull's outburst would only spread panic. That same day, the rector decided to remove Mr. John Bull from his position. The housemaster was fired and asked to leave the school right away. When the students heard that Mr. John Bull was gone, many of them felt even more scared. He had been the only teacher brave enough to openly confront the problem. Now he was gone, and the students of Saint Kizito Hostel felt more helpless than ever. After the housemaster left, the scary incidents grew more frequent. At lunch one day, a boy screamed in the dining hall because he found a dead rat on top of his meal. Everyone nearby gasped in disgust and fear. On another day, during class, a quiet student suddenly started laughing and crying at the same time for no reason. He started shouting nonsense words and threw his books, and it took 2 teachers to hold him down. People said he must have been cursed by the evil in the hostel. The students also noticed a frightening pattern. Anyone who upset Jack or Fred would get hurt mysteriously. One boy who argued with Jack was found the next morning, barely conscious with strange bruises all over. Another boy accidentally spilled water on Fred, and that night he woke up choking and saw red hand marks on his neck. Both of those students were sent home, too scared to stay. Even regular life in school became unbearable. Whenever Fred walked into the dining hall, his awful knee wound made everyone feel sick. Students would push away their plates because they lost their appetite, and Fred would just grin. It felt like the entire school was cursed. Fear hung over everyone, every hour of the day. Alex and 2 of his close friends, who also never ate Jack's snacks, realized that almost all their classmates might have fallen under the witchcraft spell. They felt they could be the next targets if they did nothing. They were terribly scared, but they gathered their courage to get help. Late one night, the 3 boys snuck out of the hostel and ran through the dark to the rector's house on campus. They pounded on the door as hard as they could until the rector opened it. "Father, please help us," Alex begged, almost crying. "They have all been initiated. Everyone is turning into witches." The rector could see the fear in their eyes. He finally realized that the boys were telling the truth about the danger. He told Alex and his friends to come inside his house and wait. Then he said firmly, "Lock the door after I leave. I am going to see what is happening for myself." Alex and the others did as they were told, though they were very worried about the rector facing the danger alone. The rector took a flashlight in one hand and a holy cross in the other and walked out into the night. Alex and his friends locked the door and peered out a window, watching fearfully. The school grounds were dark and silent as the rector moved toward the dormitories. At first, nothing seemed wrong, But when he reached the area near Saint Kizito Hostel, things changed. Suddenly, students began stepping out of each hostel building. Dozens of boys came out and stood in the dark. They moved quietly, surrounding the rector in a big circle. The rector shone his flashlight around, and his heart pounded. He recognized the students, but their faces looked different. Their eyes were empty, and some had cruel, twisted smiles. A few students even looked like their faces were stretching or changing shape slightly, showing hints of something not human. Before the rector could say a word, he was completely surrounded by the silent, eerie crowd of students. Back at the rector's house, Alex and his friends suddenly heard a terrible scream echo through the night. It was the rector's voice. They saw his flashlight fall to the ground in the distance. At that moment, loud bangs struck the door and windows of the house. Bang! 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 It felt like 100 fists were hitting the walls from outside. The boys jumped in fear. The witches had followed them to the rector's house. Alex and his friends quickly pushed a heavy cabinet against the door and shut all the windows tight. The banging was non-stop and strong, shaking the door each time. The boys hugged each other, trembling and praying as the sounds of thumps surrounded them. They feared that any second the door would burst open and the evil would grab them. But they refused to give up hope. This horrifying siege continued for hours, but just before dawn, the banging on the house stopped. The sudden silence was almost as scary as the noise. When the sun finally rose, the boys inside carefully peeked out. The yard was empty and quiet. The students who had attacked were gone. The only thing left was the rector's flashlight lying on the ground. Alex and his friends stepped out, calling for the rector, but there was no answer. He had vanished without a trace. As the day went on, teachers and police arrived at the school. Many students were missing or in shock. Alex and his friends told the police and teachers everything that had happened. After hearing all this and searching the school officials and police were shocked. They decided to close down Warrior Delta School right away. It was too dangerous to continue after such a night. All the remaining students were sent home to their families. The once lively school became empty and silent, left with unanswered questions about that terrible night. In the months and years that followed, the school grounds fell into ruin. The classrooms and hostels stood empty. Saint Kizito Hostel, which had been full of life and secrets, was now silent and covered in dust. Grass and wild bushes grew everywhere, breaking through the pavement and surrounding the buildings. People in town said the place was haunted. They avoided going near the old Warrior Delta School. Some claimed that on dark nights they could still hear faint whispers or a distant scream from the direction of the empty hostels. A few even reported seeing an owl with glowing red eyes perched on the broken roof of Saint Kizito Hostel, as if watching over the cursed ground. The story of what happened at the school became a legend. It warned everyone that even a peaceful place could hide a great evil. The ruins of the school remained as a scary reminder that the darkest secrets can hide in plain sight, and some nightmares are real. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment for more unique stories.